Hey, hi everyone. This is Sai from Let's Upgrade. So let's talk about how to get your certificate. It's very simple. You will see two links in the description. Number one is the place where you have to go and mark your attendance. Marking your attendance tells us, like, okay, you are a legit student who have attended this particular session. Link number two is your assignment. This is where your 90% of the priority is. You have to go and submit the assignment that is given to you in this particular session. Once you're done submitting that assignment, we will be evaluating that. We will send you an email. If you get the passing criteria, then only we will give you the certificate on a particular date that is mentioned again in the description. Please check these three things, and this is the way how you will get a certificate from Let's Upgrade. Number one, mark your attendance. Number two, just go ahead and upload your assignment. Check for the email that you have received it, yes or no. What is the feedback that you have received from your trainer? Number three, check on which date the certificates will be released. Thank you. Bye. All the best. Happy learning.
Hello everyone, welcome back. So, today we will be diving into one of the most exciting new additions in modern CSS, and that is nothing but CSS nesting. So, before that, let me do one thing. Let me come over to Excalibur and let me write here CSS nesting. Right. So, nesting. Right. So, before me coming to CSS nesting, we'll see why do we even need nesting and where did the problem arise, wherein we thought that, hey, we need to get this CSS nesting in place, right? Now, if you have worked with preprocessors like SAS or less, you already know how clean and and readable nested CSS looks. If you have not worked, not an issue. We'll be seeing the nesting part here itself, right? Now we finally get this capability in native CSS. Now what do I mean by native CSS? Native CSS means that we will not be using any external library. It is now a part of basic CSS, so you do not need to download or use any external package. It is already inbuilt in CSS, right? So no build tools, no extra setup, just browser support. That is it, right? So this session will give you everything you need to start using CSS nesting confidently and safely, right? So let us do one thing. First of all, I like to open my VS Code, and I've already made a new folder by the name of CSS nesting. So let me come there. Yeah, here it is. Okay, so I've already made up this folder by the name of CSS nesting. So what I can do is I can create one HTML and one CSS file. So what I'll do, I'll create maybe index.html, and similarly I can just write style.css. Okay, and to get started with, I will write the basic boilerplate and will link my CSS, right? Here is a CSS file, which I have linked here. Okay, now now what next? First of all, let us see what exactly is CSS nesting, right? So before me coming to CSS nesting, so first of all, let me tell you what nesting is. Nesting is nothing but putting things together from starting from the parent and then going out to the child levels. For example, let's suppose I have a main div, right? In those divs, I have several children divs. So this is nesting, right? I'm including one things into another so that they are whole a part of a single group, and those groups are called as nesting, right? So now let us talk about what exactly is CSS nesting. So traditionally CSS rules were written in a flat structure. Okay, maybe I'll write it down for you. So if I talk about traditionally, CSS rules were written in a flat structure. What does that mean? That means that if you want to use an let's suppose you have a nav. Inside of a nav you have an anchor tag, so you have to use something called as nav space anchor, something like this, and then apply the css, right? Let's suppose you want to apply some styling to a button, so you have to do something which is inside a nav. Obviously you have to do something like nav button, and then apply your css. So it was something like this, right? So let me get rid of this. Although we'll see in coding examples what does that mean. Now, so in short, if I have the parent selector means that is the topmost parent, child selectors, right? So we have the parent selectors, we have the child selectors, we could have pseudo classes, right? Pseudo classes, everything was written separately, right? Everything was written separately. Now, CSS nesting. Now came CSS nesting into picture. So CSS nesting lets you write your styles in a hierarchical readable structure. Now hierarchy is, as I've told you, right? If you have a parent, it has child, those again have different child. So that's a total hierarchy. So hierarchical structure. I think the spellings are a bit off. Let me just check. Hierarchical. Yeah, it is this hierarchical. So CSS nesting lets you write your styles in a hierarchical structure. So you simply place related structures inside your parent block. You simply place your we can call it child selectors, we can call it related selectors, basically all the selectors which lie under that parent. Parent okay, parent selectors. Now this kind of makes, so if we follow css nesting, what all features or what all benefits we will have. So if you have been someone who is using css nesting, you know how to use this modern css nesting. So this makes your css look what I could say cleaner, because once you see the code, you'll realize that it is pretty much readable as well. Readable and cleaner. If you want to make some changes to it, you get the hang of CSS very quickly, right? I could say cleaner, same word for, more organized. It is cleaner, it is more organized. I would say more intuitive, right? And I would say it is error prone, or I would say error prone. So what do I mean by error prone is you can easily debug if something goes wrong. Okay, you can easily debug if something goes wrong. Okay, I think intuitive, INTUI, yeah. Okay, so this is what CSS nesting helps you at, right? And not forget the best part. The best part it is, if you're someone who has already worked with SAS, if you've not, that's not an issue. If you're already who is someone who has already worked with SAS, it works almost exactly the SAS nesting does, right? But now it has a native support as well. Okay, now let us talk about some examples, right? So if I come here, first of all, let us do one thing. Let us talk about some uh, styles which we used to add natively, right? Once we were not aware, or once the CSS nesting did not come into picture in native CSS. So what we can do is, right, yeah, so what we can do is, maybe let's suppose I have a div which has a class called as card, right? And inside this card I can have a head h2. Maybe it can say this is header to, right? Apart from this, what else you could think of? We could maybe think of a paragraph which is, which lies inside your card. It can say this is a paragraph, and maybe we have some buttons. I can say maybe a submit button or something of that sort. Yeah, so I mean, I'm just trying to visualize, make you guys visualize what does nesting mean and what does hierarchy mean. So this is a card, right? This is a parent div, and these can be considered as a child div. Why do I say child div? Because this lies inside this parent, right? As simple as that. Now if you're someone who wants to, so if I open it with live server right now, this is how it looks, right? No CSS. Now I'll come to style.css. First of all, I can say something like as dot card. Maybe I can have some padding, maybe 20 pixels. So if I add padding, it adds a padding, right? And you can see it drifts down. Okay. So now if I so see now if I want to target something like uh, h2, right? I cannot directly target h2 since it is a tag, right? If I want to specifically target h2, right? So if I do something like h2 and then write my stylings, the problem here is this will be applied to all the headers irrespective of which, that is globally, right? It's irrespective of where it is placed. But what do I want? I specifically want this h2 should be placed inside. I want to basically, I just want to target h2 which is placed inside my card, which is this, so I have to, for this, do something like dot card and then target dot h2, right? Maybe I want to play with the font size, so I can do something like font size maybe 20 pixels. So if I do this, see the font size, this is not there, this is the font size, and if I do 20 pixels it will slightly reduce. See, that means I'm playing with the font size. That means we are able to specifically target. Similarly, if I want to do something like dot card p, in this I can do, maybe I want to change the color, I can do the color as aqua. So if I do this, this color gets changed. Similarly, if I want to target a button, I can do something like dot card button, and inside this button maybe I want to change the background to just black and have the text color as white, right? So as you can see, this got this CSS style, right? Now this was absolutely fine. As you can see, right, we are able to target the divs inside the card and it works absolutely fine. This works, right, as I told you, but everything is repetitive, right? So see, card, we have card. But I mean, imagine this is a very small piece of code, right? And this card is already repeated 4 times, right? It is very easy to lose track of which selectors belong together. Let's suppose the code now increases from line 10 to now it has 1,000 lines. In that case you would have to, it would be very difficult, right? So all of things will get scattered and very very untidy, right? So this was the problem, right? This was the problem. So if I come up here, if I talk about the problems, because I'm building it up this way so that first of all we understand what the problem is, and then we'll get to the solution, right? So the problem is there is too much repetition. Are we missing something? REPE repetition. Okay, there's too much repetition. It is very easy to lose track of code, right? Debugging becomes very difficult once the code size increases, right? Very difficult once the code size increases. So this was the problem, right? Now we understand what the problem was. Now let us come to the solution. So for the solution to work and to give you guys a better heads up, I will now replicate the same code using nesting. So let us see how this works. I will comment this out and see. First of all, I'll write card, and I will write the, yeah, now I will write the CSS. Okay, so first thing first. First of all, I want to add a padding. Maybe because see here I've added a padding of 20 pixels. Now here is the catch. Now this card has a header 2 inside it, right? So what I can do, I'll not move outside this bracket, I'll remain inside this bracket, and here I'll call an h2, and now we'll give these stylings exactly here. So I can do something like font size, and maybe what, it was 20 pixels, right? And it'll work absolutely seamless. Now I'll do something like a paragraph. So this is all technically inside my card, right? So that is why. So I can give color as aqua. Finally comes my button, which is also inside my card. I'll give button, and the background here is black, and the color here is white, right? And now if I show you, to your surprise, see, this is the exact same CSS which we have achieved, but using nesting this time, right? Now if I talk about the code scenario here, this looks much more cleaner, right? All related styles, live inside the card block. So this is the curly bracket, and all of these styles are inside your card element, right? The rule is simple, right? So the rule is pretty much simple. Inside a selector block, you can write other selectors directly. So for example, this is a selector and this is a selector. So this is a class selector, this is a tag selector. I've directly written my tag selector inside my class selector. Now this could be vice versa, right? You can replace selectors and all of these stuffs as it is, right? So browsers, and your browsers will automatically convert it into a standard flat CSS, because see, this is what you are writing for your own purpose, for your own readability, but browsers only understand this format. So now internally what happens is browsers will now convert this CSS into this CSS, and that's how it will work. And I hope you get it, right? So this was it, right? So pretty simple, pretty convenient, and I hope it is pretty simple. you got the basic crux of it. Now what if, so if I come here again to my, right, so now we have done the first part, right? So now let's talk about one more iteration to it, that is the and percent. So I hope you must have used it somewhere in your code, I'm not sure, but if you're doing it, if you're someone who's doing it for the first time, this is pretty much makes sense, right? Which is this sign. Okay, the and percent. Now first of all, and percent, it kind of represents the parent selector, right? It represents the parent selector. Basically it allows you to create variations. Now what do I mean by variations? If you have, like, are someone who all likes to, add some hover effect, right? So you use something called as an ampersand sign. So I'll just show you, right? So let's suppose traditionally if you want to add a hover onto a button, right? Basically let's suppose you want to add stylings to both the button and you wanted to add to hover, right? So traditionally what you used to do is you used to do something like button, on button you want to have a hover, and then you write the hovering style, right? This is what we do. I hope this is something which you guys must be aware of. And here you write some css, right? But the thing here is, and if you want to specifically apply some stylings to button, you have to again write button and then apply the styling. Whereas using nesting, it can be simply done. So if you want to apply it to a button, you can just write button and write the, the css styling here. And apart from that, if you want the same button to have a hovering effect, you do not need to write it separately, button hover. You can just write and percent, right? And you can just write hover, and once you do it, it will be automatically good to go, right? You can apply some stylings here as well, right? So this is how it works. So see, it is much easier to read. The hover stays right next to the main button styles, exactly. So let us see it in example. So we already have a button. Maybe I want to make, we can make a new button, right? Totally up to you. So, or let's do it in the same button itself. I can do something like a button. Now this button first of all would have some stylings. Maybe I would like to do, so which is already there, right? Maybe, or what you can do, maybe I just remove it from here. Or I'm thinking, because it is still inside this, right? So I can do, okay, let me do it here only. So this button already has kind of, it already has a styling to it, as you can see. Here only I will write hover, right? And to this hover, maybe I can give a background, something like purple, right? Something like purple, right? And once you do it, this will be applicable. So if I now come to to your browser, see, this is as it is. Now if I hover over to it, this has the hover effect as well, as you can see. What you can also do is, what I generally like to do, I do something like cursor as pointer. So if I come up here, yeah, this is my cursor changing to a something like this, right? So as you can see, much easier to read. The hover stays right next to the rules. You don't have to specifically write button dot hover to explicitly add on to hover. Now it is internally, it is, now you can see it, it is there. All right, so this is it. Now let's take our discussion one level up. Now what we are going to do is, we'll see how it works with your modifier classes. Okay, so let's say you have a button with a modifier class. So again, let me just open Excalidraw for once. Yes. Okay, right. So modifier classes. Now let's suppose you, as I told you, maybe have a button which has a modifier class. How do we do it in cascade? So as we have already discussed, it is pretty much the same and pretty much a similar concept. So let's suppose you have got a button, and in that button you, let's suppose first specifically if you want to add some stylings to a button, maybe some background, you can do something like background, I can say black, text I can say as white. So this is specifically and only applied to a button. And inside of this, I'm, if you notice, I'm using this inside this bracket only. That means nesting, right? Nesting, we have already seen nesting is. So I can use the ampersand sign and use something called as a class. So a primary, let's suppose I give it a primary. I can literally add up my, it is very similar to how we've used the hover sign, right? You add in your css classes. Let's suppose tomorrow you want to add some new class to it, right? You can also add danger. If you add, right, if you add danger, maybe you can give some colors name which is which highlights danger, which is nothing but let's suppose background, we have red, and all of those stuff. Again, everything stays together. By nesting we mean that your whole your um, parent tag as a whole, it will stay intact. All the properties will kind of stay, will kind of stay intact. As simple as that, right? So this is what it is. So let us do one thing. I like you guys. I would want to build. Let's build a kind of, I would say, a card system altogether, right? So instead of this, maybe I can comment out this one, and I'll build a class, I'll build a div which will have a class. A class could, which will, class could be anything. I'll give profile card or whatever that is. Basically what will be the content I want to have it inside. Maybe I want to have an image, because a card could have an image, my name, my profile, my submit button or follow button, or whatever that is. And then let me add styling using nesting, right? Let's make a whole full card kind of a thing. So this is my card. First of all, I would want to add a class to it. Maybe I can say something like profile image, right? And after this, to this class, we could have some content. As I told you, I would want to specifically maybe keep an image. So I can have an image which could have a source. Maybe I'll pick it up from the internet very soon. Apart from that, some basic details, maybe my name, right? Maybe something, maybe a paragraph which could just have my designation or whatever, maybe, right? I mean, it is personally up to you whatever you want to add. So I can add front end developer. Apart from this, maybe a button which says follow me or something of that sort, right? As simple as that. So this is what it is. This is what we want to kind of add here. Now let us go to Google and try to search for any image, right? I'll head over to Google. Yep, here it is. I might want to restore. Yeah, okay. And in here, maybe I'll just like search for any profile pic or something of that sort. I'll go to images. Yeah, I can maybe pick up this. Yeah, looks smart, but this is certainly not me. I'll just copy the image address, and I'll go to VS Code and add the link here. Yep, as simple as that. And I'll open the live server again because for some reason my Google crashed. So I'll open it again, and I'll open the live server again. Okay, so this is how it looks like, right? It has my profile pic. Obviously I'll design it, I'll resize it. This is my name, this is my designation, right? And a follow button, or if you want to add some details as well. I mean, feel free to add it and use it as per your need. Okay, now apart from this, what we could add is, so if I go to VS Code, maybe some, so maybe you can add a little of what you do. So if you have a paragraph here, maybe lorem, I'll just write lorem 10 here. You could replace this by some information that you want to add, right? Cool. Now let us come to the most interesting part, which is the CSS. So I'll comment out the CSS for now because we don't need it right now, and I'll try to add the CSS. So in this, I've already used profile image, right? Or to give it a better name, we could say profile card as well. Yeah, profile card as well, and just make it as it is. Cool. So I'll come to dot profile card, and to this I'll try to give some stylings. First of all, what I like to do is I like to go with padding. I'll apply 20 pixels. So if you apply padding, this is how it looks like. It adds, as you can see, it is not close to the borders. It moves it drifts down. Apart from the padding, I could add a border radius, maybe 12 pixels, right? So if you are adding a border radius, you might want to add a border as well, totally up to you. I don't want to at this point of time. If you want to, you can just add a border as well, right? Now comes the background. Maybe we want to keep the background as pure white. So the hex code for pure white is, I think, FF. Yeah, so that means it remains perfectly white, although it is white. Or maybe you can go with beige as well, totally up to you, right? Colors combination is totally up to you. And or you know what, let me also add a border. I'll use 2 pixels, solid black. Yeah, so now it has a border to it. Cool. Apart from that, now I want to target the image which is inside this profile card, right? So this profile card. So if we don't know nesting, what we would do, we'll write dot profile card space image, and then all we'll write the stylings. But since we now are aware of what nesting is, we'll not write repetitive code. Inside in here, I could write something called as an image. Now this image, I can first of all want to give some width. I usually go with, to make it a little boxy, I usually go with 80 pixels. If you do 80 pixels, it behaves something like this. You could give it height as well, but if you do, this is quite a, I would say, a hack. If you do 90 pixels, it automatically adjusts itself, and the height is also just perfect to not play around with it. And just want to add some border radius. If you want to, you can, maybe if you want to make it circular, you can use 50%. Sorry, not and yeah, if you want to make it circular, you can use 50%. If you want to add a little bit of, only a little bit of it, just you can do 25%. Or you can also give it in pixels, maybe 10 pixels, 15, 20. Since I want to go with circular, I'm using this. Cool, right? So the image is done. Now what else do we have? We have h3. Okay, so here comes h3. Now this h3, I can have a margin top, maybe I can say, or it is already, I think, up to the mark, but if I say 10 pixels, it will just move a bit up. Yeah, that should be good to go. Apart from that, we also have a paragraph. Yeah, this. So okay, now this paragraph, I want to give it a color is totally again up to you, but maybe I can go with something called as beige. Oh no, not beige, maybe I have to use something darker, blue. Yeah, looks good. Or maybe a shadow of this black. Yeah, looks good. And lastly comes my button. Oops, not like this, it has to be a button. Now since this button is, it looks pretty simple, maybe first of all I can give it some padding specifically to a button. So I can give something as 10 pixels. I think it's too much, maybe 5 pixels was still just too good. And I also like to give cursor pointer. Yeah, so this it has a pointer icon to it once I hover onto it, something like this, right? As simple as that. And apart from this, yeah, let's add a hover. So if you want to add a hover, right, I don't need to specifically again write button hover. I can just write and %hover and just add my hovering style. Maybe I'll do background onto, maybe on hover I want it blue. Yeah, so once I hover over to it, it is turning blue, and the color I would want as white. Yeah, maybe I can have a lighter shade of blue. Yeah, this looks good, right? So again this is just a profile card page I'm trying to use. And see, if you observe carefully, I've used nesting, right, inside this. All of it is inside this. I hope this will give you a good idea on what we are trying to do, right? So this is where, this is where nesting shines, and all the markup structure is reflected, perfectly inside the css that you see here. As simple as that, right? So I hope you get a good idea of it, and you are now ready to use it in your projects, the nesting part, right? So this was all about your nesting. But also, um, do you think we can always use nesting? So till now we've already covered the positives of nesting, right? So we firstly saw what the problem was occurring when we were using nesting. Then we saw what exactly nesting is, how do we use nesting, how do we avoid repetitions. But there are some cases where we might not want to use nesting, and I'll jot down those for you, right? I'll say when not to use nesting. Right, when not to use nesting. So first of all, don't use nesting too deeply. That means don't make a cluster of nesting objects. Try to keep it at max 2 to 3 levels down. What do I mean by that? So if you see here, this is a nesting, right? And this is a nesting inside nesting. So if you see button has a nesting inside a nesting, right? So this is fine, you can use. So this is only 2 levels down. This is fine, you can do 2 levels, 3 level, at max 4 levels down. But if you go beyond that, again, it might not look that much readable. So that's why I say that don't uh, use nesting too deeply. I don't use nesting too deeply. I can say just maybe try to keep at max 2 to 3, or maybe 3 to 4 downs level, max 3 to 4 level down, right? Don't try to use it that way. And also don't use nesting for unrelated selectors, right? This is what I've seen a lot of people do, that they try to use selectors wherein we can use a flat css, right? So use nesting only when where logical, right? So again, let's suppose I come up here and I want to add a maybe add a section, a nav section, right? So I can, so if I genuinely want to use nesting, I'll do something called as nav, and inside this nav I'll use h2, and then I will create, this is a nav, right? So I'll, if I want to write css, I'll write nav, then I'll write h2. But if you see, if I can get rid of this, I can just simply say this is nav. This will also work fine, right? So in places where it is not needed, don't try to force yourself by using nesting. Only use it wherever you want to, wherever you think that, you know, kind of, you will have levels, hierarchy levels, only use it there. So don't use nesting at places where it can be avoided, because at the end of the day you would want to keep your code as simple as possible, right? As simple as possible. So this is all about when not to use it. And if I talk about the most important part, which is what all browsers it supports, because as I told you, browsers play a very important role if you want to write css, because at the end of the day, this nesting css that you write here, it will be converted into a flat css, but your browsers will do it. So we should also understand what all browsers support it. So the very commonly used one is Chrome, right? It supports it. Browsers which support nesting, these are all the major ones, right? So we have got Chrome, we have got Edge, right? We have got what is this, Safari for iOS users, and we've got Firefox, right? These are all the browsers which support nesting. Okay, so let us, maybe recap or summarize what we have done. So if I want to recap, so first of all, CSS nesting lets you write cleaner code, right? Also you can nest selectors directly. I'll just write it down. You can nest selectors directly. Earlier we used to use a tool like SAS to do it, but now it is already a part of it, so you can nest selectors directly inside a parent, right? And we use the ampersand, which is this. We use the ampersand to nest hovering, right? To create styles like, to create effects like hovering, right? So this is what it is. I hope all of it made sense to you, and make sure to give it a good practice, include it in the project that you are doing, and you should be good to go. Okay, so with that being said, thank you so much for watching this video.